federal government just told dealerships all across the country something very simple. If you mislead customers on pricing, if you advertise one thing and charge another, if you hide fees and make them simply unclear, you could be looking at up to $50,000 per violation. Not per dealership, per violation. Now, if you weren't around for it back in the day, Cash for Clunkers brought in this kind of behavior as well. Today, it's even worse. After we got out of COVID, everybody decided, hey, let's go ahead and start putting on massive fees on these vehicles. The industry heard that and they freaked out and went into immediate panic. Are they coming for our fees? Are we not allowed to charge anything anymore? Is this good for front-end gross profit? Well, here's the thing. It's not an end to gross profit, and they're not coming for your addendums or anything along those lines. So let's all just calm down for just a second. They're not coming after anything that is actually going to help you thrive. What they're doing is coming after the bad actors. They're coming after how you explain these things. And that right there is where most dealerships have the most trouble, because the problem actually has never been the fees. It's been how people feel about them. It's the moment that the customer actually discovers that the fee is there in the first place. This is why customers hate us in general. But the moment where everything shifts, that moment is where trust takes a serious hit. That moment is where your deal starts slipping, and all of a sudden you have customers giving you absolutely terrible reviews, even if they buy the car. Well, today we're going to fix that. And not just in theory, not with compliance talk, with real world strategy that you can use right now, today. So let's jump in and let's get this thing started. What actually triggered these warnings? Why are customers reacting the way that they do to the fees when we present them? And also, how can we explain these things in a way that doesn't crater our deal every single freaking time? So down that rabbit hole we go. What actually triggered these warnings to the feds? Why are customers reacting the way that they are to the fees when we present them? And how can we explain these things in ways that keep the deal moving without it cratering every freaking time that we need to present or explain our addendum? And yeah, I built you a tool that actually helps out with this, and it's really cool. I spent a lot of time on it this week. It's inside our brand new auto shop, and you can find that in the link in the show notes. It's called the Fee Transparency Coach. But before I get to all of that fun stuff that goes along with the tool, which I'm sure you're going to absolutely love, we need to fix how we're thinking about this thing. Because if your reaction was the same as mine when I first read this stuff, like, oh my gosh, no way, okay, the salespeople aren't going to be making any money anymore. This is not going to happen. This is not great. We're looking at it completely backwards. And after studying this for a little bit, I think I start to understand this, because the dealerships that figure this out, they're not going to lose on gross. Actually, they're going to flourish and make even more money than I ever have. The dealerships that figure this out, they're not going to lose gross. They're just not. They're going to kill it, and they're going to take it from the dealers that are completely ignoring it and whining about this out there. So let's change the narrative and let's start making some coin. All right, let me take you through a deal. Customer comes in, they take a seat. Test drive, it's done. They love the car. They're completely chill. They're relaxed. They love you. You're doing everything right. You made that connection, and the customer's like, this person's awesome. They're completely engaged, and they're mentally ready to buy. So you're sitting there across from each other at the desk, and you start working the numbers. Everything's going completely smoothly. And you're like, the momentum's there. This is going to happen. And then it happens. The paper hits the desk, and the customer responds with something to the effect of, wait, whoa, what the heck is this? Why is this here? That wasn't in the price. And you could see it immediately on their face, their whole body, their posture changes, their tone tightens, their energy drops, and it has nothing to do about the car. They love the car, and they loved you up until this point. Nothing about the deal fundamentally changed for them. But the feeling of what just transpired did. And once that happens, you're not selling anymore. You're defending. And there goes your gross profit. That moment the deal dies, you just start bleeding out. And you just start rambling on and on, saying things to attempt to recover. So let's clean this whole thing up, because the problem, actually, it's not your fees. Every dealership has them. They're actually to be expected, and they're something that people talk about an awful lot. The dock fee, the recon fee, protection, accessories, these things are there. They're not the issue. The issue is actually something that's much more fundamentally different and far more human. It actually has to go into things like timing, clarity, control. Things like you waited too long. I hate this one. Clarity, you explained it poorly, and that's going to kill you every single time. In control, you let the customer find it instead of guiding them through it. And you would not be happy to be in that position either. If the customer discovers the fee, you lose control. There's just no two ways about it. If you introduce it, you have a chance to keep control. Now, a little sidebar. When I say the word control, I mean that you can guide the customer through the experience. I don't mean that you can drag them around and do whatever you want with them. Listen to some of my first few podcasts, and you'll hear me talk about control. Control in our industry is essentially a myth. It was essentially propagated by people that, well, just completely lack it, usually in their home life. Control is about being able to navigate the conversation and let the customer know that, hey, I'm here partnering with you. This is how this thing's going to work. But if we throw control out there as something to command, we've already lost. Your customer is not your adversary. They are your partner. So what do? Here's how we fix it. The transparent confidence framework. Step 1, you got to lead with the total. You have to give them the whole number. They're going to pay it anyway, so why are you hiding it? And put it in terms of, before we get into the deal, here's the full picture, right? No surprises, no step 2, name the fee early. If it's something like the documentation fee, just call it exactly that. Don't be vague. Don't be soft. Be clear, because clarity is what the customer is looking for at this point in time. Now, step 3, translate to value. Let them know what it actually is. This covers things like compliance and making sure that everything is done correctly so you don't have issues down the road later. Just say it calmly. Make it simple. Step 4, normalize and give some form of optionality. Some customers choose this, some don't. I just want you to see everything clearly. When you do this, pressure drops immediately because they're starting to see the whole story. And then on to step 5, and this is a big one for me, check the emotional temperature. Does that make sense so far? Just straight up ask them, do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? Maybe in slightly nicer terms. But clarity reduces anxiety. And when anxiety drops, people move forward. Remember, the primary goal of our job is to reduce anxiety and increase motivation, but motivation can't exist if anxiety is there. So here's what most people miss about the whole thing. Customers don't react to fees. They react to surprises about those fees. Surprises creates loss of control, and loss of control creates anxiety. Control goes both ways, by the way. Anxiety then creates hesitation because fight or flight kicks in. And hesitation just flat out kills momentum. When you remove surprise from the equation, you remove the resistance. And really, that's the game. Again, if our primary job is to manage anxieties, then we better know very well how to go about explaining some of these things. If you simply drop the fee in front of the customer, next thing you're going to be arguing about $3 per month for 60 months. And really, nobody wants to do that. They don't want to do it. You don't want to do it. And we make jokes all the time about, well, the customer this, the customer that. My rule of thumb has always been, if we're $100 away a month and you're telling me that you don't want the car, at that payment, you don't want the car. Because if you're motivated, you get over that hurdle. When I was selling, I remember I was working with a gentleman. He looks at the deal and goes, what's this extra $99? Now, at the time, we only had a $99 addendum on our cars. And as consultants, we were kind of freaking out about it, going, how do we explain this to people? We eventually figured it out. We used it as a dock fee, and we explained that it paid the people in the back office. And that was actually absolutely true. That's what the owner used it for, was to pay the people in the back office processing the paperwork. They needed a couple extra hands. But I didn't mention it. And when the paper hit the desk, the guy looked at it and said, remove that. Now, legally in the state where I was, we couldn't remove it. I suggested that we bury it. I suggested that we just move it along. Heck, I even suggested at one point that I go ahead and pay it just simply because the deal was pretty lucrative. But in the end, what actually happened was that we ended up writing on the contract, and the guy ended up understanding after we discounted the car by a couple $100. Long story. F&I got their fingers in it, and so did the general manager, and it just went completely sideways. So all in all, here's the deal. When it comes down to what we do daily, we gotta keep the customer on top of what's going on, but also clue them in on how a lot of this stuff works. Now, seeing this article come across my desk and reading it and embodying every sales consultant out there going, oh my gosh, my deals are gone. My front end commission, my gross is gone. That paycheck that I used to survive on is gone. And now I'm going to have to go to a terrible salary model, which never works out for car salespeople because we always quit those and go somewhere else that actually pays us what we're worth. Now, I just didn't want to talk about this topic, and I know I glazed over the surface, but I just want everybody to know that there's not anything really big here. For those 97 dealers that got wrapped up in it, yeah, it is an absolutely major problem for them. And the reason is that you've been hosing your customers, and you've been doing it with a smile on your face. Now listen, I'm all about put an addendum on your cars. We got to eat, and we can market it however we want. End of the day comes around, it's still a free market, and the customer can go somewhere else and buy a car if they don't like our $10, $12, $15,000 addendum. But when the customer feels surprised by it and emotionally downtrodden, they will take it to places like the federal government. So to help out with this and to help out with our explanations of how these things work and be able to explain them in a way that brings empathy to the table and also allows for the customer to understand where we're coming from, because all we did was show them a vehicle, and it's not our fault that the manager, owner, or whoever put a massive addendum on the vehicle. You got here, I showed you the car, I made you love it, and now I'm stuck holding the bag. So I built something for you for this week. This particular tool, I really love it. It's called the Fee Transparency Coach and can be found on the Auto Shop. It helps you do something fairly simple. It helps you explain fees clearly and tie them back to value. This keeps the conversation calm, and it avoids the wait, what the hell is this kind of moment that may bubble up and completely destroy deals or just wreck your RO. Now, I didn't just stop at sales. I went into finance, I went into service, and I went after managers with this one, meaning that the tool can be used across every single department, because when anxiety starts to bubble up, especially from these fees, and especially when customers don't know what the heck am I paying for when it comes to being in the service lane, that anxiety, that frustration, it spreads like a cancer throughout the dealership. So we need to make customers feel comfortable instantly. But if you take a look in the show notes, you'll find the link right in there that goes right over to the Fee Transparency Coach. I hope you like it. I hope it works for you. But here's the takeaway. You don't lose deals because of fees. You just don't. You lose deals because of how fees are experienced. If it feels hidden, you lose trust. If it feels forced, you all of a sudden have lost control of the whole conversation. If it feels confusing, you lost the customer and they're gone. They're not coming back. Why would they? But here's the kicker. If it feels clear, if it feels honest, if it feels guided, you don't just keep the deal, you actually strengthen it. And the customer's more willing to buy things in finance. They're more willing to come back to you in the future. And your future business relies on clarity, because clarity is directly connected to profit through things like happiness and motivation. So for this week, take a look at that tool. My name's Andrew Sardone with Auto Nerd. Please go out there, spread the kindness, spread the caring. I hope you got something out of this one this week, and I'll talk to you all soon.